You wake up every morning feeling empty, don't you? Not sad, not angry, just nothing. You scroll through your phone, consume content, go to work, come home, repeat. And somewhere deep inside, you wonder if this hollow feeling in your chest is depression, anxiety, or just what being an adult feels like. But what if I told you that your numbness isn't a personal failing, isn't a chemical imbalance, isn't even really yours? What if I told you that Mark Fisher, the brilliant cultural theorist who took his own life in 2017, had already diagnosed the real cause of your emotional flatness? It's not you that's broken. It's the entire system. Your numbness is not a bug in the matrix. It's a feature. Mark Fisher understood something that mainstream psychology desperately wants to hide. What we call mental illness under capitalism is often the only sane response to an insane system. In his devastating work, Capitalist Realism, Fisher didn't just analyze capitalism as an economic system. He revealed it as a totalitarian reality that has colonized our unconscious, our dreams, our capacity to feel anything authentic. You think you're depressed? Fisher would say you're not depressed enough. You're experiencing what he called depressive hedonia, a condition where you can still consume, still function, still produce value for capital, but you've lost the ability to experience genuine pleasure, genuine connection, genuine hope. You're not broken. You're perfectly adapted to a broken world. The numbness you feel isn't random. It's structurally produced by a system that requires your emotional compliance. Capitalism doesn't just exploit your labor. It exploits your attention, your desires, your anxiety, your very capacity to feel. Every emotion becomes raw material for extraction. Your happiness becomes market research data. Your sadness becomes content for pharmaceutical companies. Your anger becomes engagement metrics for social media platforms. Fisher saw that capitalist realism operates through what he called reflexive impotence, the condition where you know things are fucked. You can articulate exactly how they're fucked, but you feel completely powerless to change anything. Sound familiar? That's not your personal weakness. That's the system working exactly as designed. Your political paralysis is capitalism's greatest achievement. But here's the most insidious part. The system has convinced you that your numbness is your fault. That if you just practiced more self-care, meditated more, exercised more, optimized your productivity, bought the right products, you could feel whole again. This is what Fisher called therapeutic culture, a massive deflection that turns every systemic problem into an individual pathology. Your brain has been rewired by capitalism to expect constant stimulation while being incapable of deep satisfaction. You need more and more content, more and more products, more and more experiences, just to feel briefly alive. But nothing ever truly fulfills you, because the system is designed to keep you perpetually wanting, perpetually consuming, perpetually dissatisfied. Remember when you were a kid and you felt things intensely? When music could transport you to other worlds? When films could make you believe in magic? When you had wild dreams about who you might become? Fisher understood that capitalism's primary function is the systematic destruction of that intensity, that wildness, that dangerous capacity for transformation. What happened to your desires? They weren't abandoned. They were domesticated, channeled, commodified. Your rebellion became a fashion statement. Your creativity became content creation. Your love became relationship optimization. Your dreams became career goals. Everything that once felt limitless became a product category. Social media didn't connect you to others. It turned your social life into a performance, your relationships into content, your emotions into data points. You don't use Facebook. Facebook uses you. You don't watch Netflix. Netflix watches you, learning your patterns, predicting your choices, gradually narrowing the range of what you think you want until your desires become indistinguishable from the algorithm's recommendations. Fisher saw that what we call choice under late capitalism is actually the elimination of choice disguised as infinite options. You can choose between thousands of streaming shows, but you can't choose to live in a world without work. You can choose your gender identity, but you can't choose to live outside the market economy. You can choose your lifestyle, but you can't choose to stop the destruction of the planet. This pseudo-choice is what creates the numbness. You're constantly making decisions that don't matter, while being denied the ability to make decisions that do matter. Your agency is channeled into consumption, while your real power, your power to collectively transform society, is systematically neutralized. Every swipe, every click, every purchase is a moment of agency drained of consequence. You feel like you're choosing, but the choice is always between different versions of the same thing. Which brand of emptiness? Which flavor of alienation? Which style of submission to forces beyond your control? Here's where Fisher's analysis becomes truly explosive. The mental health system under capitalism isn't designed to heal you. It's designed to manage you, to make you functional enough to work and consume, but not so healthy that you start questioning why you need to be medicated just to tolerate your life. The pharmaceutical industry has convinced an entire generation that their alienation is a brain chemistry problem. That the emptiness you feel looking at your life, your meaningless job, your social isolation, your climate anxiety, your financial stress, can be fixed with the right combination of SSRIs. But Fisher saw through this con game. If the problem is systemic, how can the solution be individual? This isn't to say that medication is never helpful. It's to recognize that medicating mass unhappiness is a political choice. A society that requires pharmaceutical intervention for millions of its members to function is not a healthy society. It's a society in crisis that has chosen to drug its population rather than address the conditions causing mass suffering. Therapy culture has become the perfect complement to pharmaceutical culture. Both locate the problem inside your individual psychology, rather than in the social conditions that shape that psychology. You're encouraged to work on yourself, to heal your trauma, to optimize your mental health, all while the traumatizing conditions remain unchanged. Fisher understood that this therapeutic discourse functions as social control. It channels political rage into psychological introspection. Instead of asking, why is this system making so many people miserable? Зрение. Вы обучены спрашивать, почему я не лучше справляюсь с этим системой? The revolution is transformed into self-improvement. The mental health industry has become a massive machine for converting collective political problems into individual psychological disorders. Your anxiety about climate change becomes eco-anxiety, requiring individual therapy rather than collective action. Your rage about economic inequality becomes anger management rather than political organizing. Your despair about the future becomes depression rather than realistic assessment of objective conditions. One of Fisher's most profound insights was about how capitalism destroys time itself. You feel numb partly because you've lost access to both the past and the future. You live in what he called chronic contemporaneity, a state where only the immediate present exists, where history feels irrelevant and the future feels impossible to imagine. Social media accelerates this temporal collapse. Your timeline isn't linear. It's a chaotic jumble of present moments without context or consequence. You know more about what celebrities ate for lunch today than about the historical forces that shaped your current reality. You can access infinite information about the present, but struggle to imagine genuine alternatives to how things are. This is why revolution feels impossible even when conditions are objectively revolutionary. You can't fight for a different future if you can't imagine one. You can't learn from the past if you don't remember it. Capitalism has trapped you in an eternal present, where change feels impossible because time itself has been flattened. Fisher saw that this temporal collapse is intimately connected to environmental destruction. Climate change represents the return of the future, specifically, the return of consequences that can't be ignored or deferred indefinitely. But capitalism's response to climate crisis perfectly illustrates its temporal dysfunction. Instead of long-term transformation, we get short-term technological fixes and market-based solutions that protect profits while the planet burns. Your numbness is partly the result of living in a world without genuine futurity. When the future feels foreclosed, when all roads seem to lead to the same destination, when every alternative has been co-opted or commodified, your emotional investment in life naturally withers. Why feel deeply about anything if nothing can really change? The destruction of historical memory compounds this temporal flattening. You're cut off from examples of successful resistance, from alternative ways of organizing society, from the knowledge that things have been different and could be different again. Capitalism presents itself as eternal and natural precisely by erasing the memory of its historical contingency. Fisher wasn't just a political theorist. He was a cultural critic who understood that capitalism controls you through aesthetics, through the shaping of sensibility, through what he called capitalist realism, the pervasive feeling that capitalism is not just dominant, but inevitable, natural, eternal. Look around you. Every space has been colonized by corporate aesthetics. Your city looks like every other city. The same chain stores, the same architectural styles, the same branded experiences. This isn't accidental. It's the systematic elimination of local culture, of alternative ways of organizing space and time. Music, film, art, all have been flattened into content, optimized for algorithmic distribution, designed for maximum engagement rather than genuine aesthetic experience. The weird, the challenging, the truly alternative gets filtered out by recommendation systems that prioritize familiar variations over genuine novelty. This aesthetic homogenization is directly connected to your numbness. When every experience feels familiar, when every surprise has been focus grouped, when every rebellion has been pre-packaged for consumption, your capacity for genuine aesthetic shock, and therefore for transformation, atrophies. Fisher understood that breaking capitalist realism requires recovering what he called the weird, aesthetic experiences that crack open the taken-for-granted nature of reality, that make the familiar strange, that reveal possibilities beyond the current system's horizon. The cultural products that once challenged dominant ideology have been absorbed into the very system they once critiqued. Punk rock sells sneakers, hip-hop sells luxury brands, counterculture becomes marketing strategy. Even your rebellion has been anticipated, packaged, and sold back to you as lifestyle choice. This co-optation of resistance creates a profound form of cultural depression. When every gesture of refusal has been commodified, when every expression of authenticity becomes a brand opportunity, when every moment of genuine feeling gets monetized, the very possibility of authentic expression begins to feel impossible. Fisher taught in universities and watched them transform into debt-generating machines that produce compliant workers rather than critical thinkers. He saw how neoliberalism had invaded education, turning knowledge into a commodity and students into customers. The numbness you might have felt in school wasn't boredom. It was the systematic crushing of intellectual curiosity. Education under capitalism isn't about developing your capacity to think. It's about training you to accept hierarchies, follow instructions, and compete with your peers for artificially scarce rewards. Students accumulate crushing debt not for education, but for credentials, pieces of paper that might grant access to jobs that probably don't exist in an economy that no longer needs human workers for most tasks. The university promises social mobility while functioning as a debt trap that ensures you'll spend decades working jobs you hate to pay for an education that didn't prepare you for the world you actually inhabit. Fisher saw that this transformation of education was part of capitalism's war against the future. If young people are buried in debt and trained in compliance, they can't afford to take risks, to experiment, to create alternatives. Student debt isn't just economic control, it's temporal control. It mortgages your future before you've had a chance to imagine what you might want that future to contain. The neoliberalization of education also destroys what Fisher called popular modernism, the post-war belief that culture and knowledge should be democratically accessible, that ordinary people deserve access to the best that has been thought and created. Now, culture is either dumbed down for mass consumption or made prohibitively expensive for elite consumption, with no space for the weird, challenging, transformative art that makes genuine culture possible. Fisher's own suicide in 2017 wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a political event that illuminated the murderous nature of the system he spent his life analyzing. His death revealed what happens when someone sees too clearly, feels too deeply, refuses too completely to accept the unacceptable. But Fisher's suicide also demonstrates the ultimate cruelty of capitalist realism. It convinces you that escape is only possible through individual exit rather than collective transformation. The system is so totalizing that even its most perceptive critics can't imagine a way out except through death. This is the final form of capitalist control. When the system becomes so obviously destructive that resistance seems pointless, suicide becomes a rational response to an irrational world. Your numbness protects you from the despair that comes with seeing clearly. Fisher saw clearly, and it killed him. Yet Fisher's work also reveals the system's fundamental vulnerability. Capitalism requires your belief in its permanence to maintain its power. When enough people stop believing, when enough people recognize that their suffering is systematically produced rather than naturally inevitable, the whole edifice begins to crack. The increasing rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide under late capitalism aren't signs of individual pathology. They're symptoms of systemic breakdown. When a system can only maintain itself by making its participants miserable, it has revealed its fundamental contradiction. It needs healthy humans to exploit, but its operations systematically undermine human health. Fisher understood that capitalism operates not just through economic exploitation, but through what he called effective control, the management of feeling, emotion, desire. Your numbness isn't accidental. It's the result of sophisticated techniques for modulating human affect in service of capital accumulation. Social media platforms use behavioral psychology to create addiction patterns that keep you scrolling while gradually eroding your capacity for sustained attention, deep feeling, and meaningful connection. The infinite scroll isn't designed to inform or entertain you. It's designed to harvest your attention and emotional responses as raw material for advertising algorithms. The attention economy, is really an affect economy. Your feelings are the product being sold. Every emotion you experience while engaging with digital media becomes data that can be used to predict and manipulate your future behavior. You're not the customer. You're the raw material being processed into profit. This effective exploitation creates a peculiar form of emotional alienation. You experience your own feelings as strange, mediated, not quite your own. You're never sure if you genuinely like something or if you've been algorithmically conditioned to like it. Your preferences, your desires, your emotional responses all feel contaminated by external manipulation. So here's the truth that Mark Fisher died trying to tell you. Your numbness isn't natural, isn't permanent, isn't your fault. It's the result of a system that requires your emotional compliance to maintain its power. Every day you feel nothing, capital wins. Every day you mistake systemic dysfunction for personal inadequacy, the machine grows stronger. But there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. The same conditions that produce mass numbness also create the objective possibility for mass awakening. The same technologies that isolate you could reconnect you. The same global crises that seem overwhelming could become the catalyst for transformation that seemed impossible. Fisher understood that capitalist realism's greatest vulnerability is its claim to be eternal and natural. But nothing human-made is eternal. Nothing socially constructed is natural. Everything that exists was created and can therefore be transformed. Your numbness is real, but it's not you. It's the system speaking through you, conditioning you, preparing you for a life of productive compliance. But you are not your conditioning. You are not your numbness. You are not the system's story about who you're supposed to be. The revolution begins when you stop trying to fix yourself and start recognizing that you're not broken. The world is. When you stop asking, how can I feel better in this system? And start asking, how can we create a system that doesn't require people to feel numb just to survive? Fisher's death was a tragedy, but his analysis remains a weapon. Every moment of numbness you experience is also a moment of potential recognition. This is not how human life has to be. This flatness, this emptiness, this emotional deadness, it's all historically contingent, systemically produced, and therefore collectively transformable. The system wants you numb because feeling people are dangerous people. When you start to feel again, really feel, not just consume emotions as content, you become a threat to the smooth operation of the machine. Your authentic emotions can't be commodified, can't be predicted, can't be controlled. Mark Fisher couldn't live to see that revolution, but he gave us the map. The question now is whether we'll have the courage to use it. Your numbness is not a life sentence. It's a starting point. The crack in everything is also the crack in you, and that's where the light gets in. Wake up. Feel. Fight. The future is watching.